Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kristine Torralba, and I'm a member of the women's golf team. And I'm reading Blizzard to the Moon by Mary Pope Osborne. One summer day, a mysterious tree house appeared in the woods. A brother and sister named Jack and Annie soon learned that the treehouse was magic. It could take them to any time and any place in history. They also learned that the treehouse belonged to Morgan Le Fay, a magical librarian from the legendary realm of Camelot. After Jack and Annie traveled on many adventures for Morgan, Merlin, the magician, began sending them on Merlin missions in the treehouse. With help from two young sorcerers named Teddy and Kathleen, Jack and Annie visited four mythical places and found valuable objects to help save Camelot. For their next four Merlin missions, Jack and Annie were told they must travel to real times and real places in history, and prove to Merlin that they could use magic wisely. First, they went on a mission to the city of Venice. Next, they journeyed to the ancient city of Baghdad. On their most recent trip, they visited the city of Paris in 1889. Now, they are waiting to hear from Merlin again. The November sky was gray with clouds. Jack sat reading in front of the living room fire. "Who wants hot chocolate?" his dad called from the kitchen. "Me, please," Jack said. The front door burst open, and with a gust of cold wind, Annie rushed inside. "Jack, guess what?" she whispered. "It's back." "How do you know?" Jack said. "I was walking home from the library." Annie paused to catch her breath. "And I saw a flash in the sky above the woods. The last time that happened." Before she could finish the sentence, Jack jumped up. "Dad, Annie and I are going to go outside for a while," he shouted. "Can the hot chocolate wait till we get back?" "Sure, have fun," their dad called from the kitchen. "I have to get my pack," Jack said to Annie. "Meet you on the porch." "Don't forget the rhyme book," said Annie. Annie slipped outside, and Jack ran up to his room. He grabbed his backpack. He checked to make sure their book of magic rhymes was inside. Good, there it was. Jack changed back downstairs. He pulled on his boots, put on his jacket, tied a scarf around his neck, grabbed his mittens, and headed out the door. "Come on," said Annie. "Jack, could you see his breath in the cold air?" "Brr," he said. "Let's hurry." Jack and Annie ran down the street and into the Frog Creek woods. They wove between the trees, their boots crunching through the fallen leaves. Jack stopped. The magic tree house was back, high in a tall oak tree. It was silhouetted against the gray November sky. "You were right," he said to Annie. "Good work." "Thanks," Annie said. She ran to the rope ladder and started up. Jack followed her. When they climbed inside the tree house, Jack and Annie saw a book and a scroll of parchment paper lying on the floor. Annie picked up the scroll, unrolled it, and read aloud. "Dear Jack and Annie of Frog Creek, I am sending you on one more mission to prove that you can use magic wisely. This poem will guide you. The very last unicorn is now hidden well by those who have put him under a spell. 4 centuries, 4 decades, from that afternoon at the end of November, before the blue moon. He will wake once more and be free to go home if you call out his name, divine flower of Rome." You must coax him to stand. Once his name is spoken, his chain will break, and the spell too be broken. Then a young girl must love him, and show him the way, let he be trapped forever on public display. If he loses this chance to rise and depart, all magic will fade from his horn and his heart. A unicorn, breathed Annie. I love him already. I'll show him the way. But this poem is really hard to understand, said Jack. What kind of research book did Morgan send us? He picked up the book that had been left for them by Morgan Le Fay, the librarian of Camelot. The cover showed a row of skyscrapers. The title was New York City Guidebook, 1938. New York City? Said Annie. I love New York City. Remember the great time we had there with Aunt Mallory? Yeah, I love that too, said Jack. But why would there be a unicorn in New York City in 1938? A unicorn is an ancient fantasy creature. New York City's a real place, and 1938 is not even that long ago. You're right, said Annie. It sounds like a hard mission, but don't forget we have Teddy and Kathleen's magic rhymes to help us. Yeah, said Jack. He pulled out the book given to them by their friends, Teddy and Kathleen, two young enchanters of Camelot. The problem is, we can only use each rhyme once, and we've already used 7 out of the 10. Which means we still have 3 left, said Annie. What are they? Pull a cloud from the sky, said Jack. Cool, said Annie. Yeah, it is, said Jack. But I'm not sure it will be much use. He looked back at the book. Find a treasure you must never lose, he said. Hey, that's a really good one, said Annie. The unicorn's a treasure, so that rhyme could take care of our whole mission. But it only partly fits, said Jack. You could call the unicorn a treasure, but once we find him, we have to lose him. He has to go back home. Oh, right, said Annie. What else? Your favorite, said Jack. Turn into ducks. Annie laughed. I can't wait to use that one, she said. I hope we never use that one, said Jack. He didn't want to waddle around and quack like a duck. These leftover rhymes don't seem very helpful to me. Well, let's just wait and see, said Annie. But now, she held up Morgan's research book and smiled. Jack nodded. New York City, here we come, he said. He pointed at the book's cover. I wish we could go there. The wind started to blow. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still, absolutely still. Snow blew into the treehouse. Jack and Annie wore wool coats, hats, and mittens. Jack's canvas backpack had turned into a leather briefcase with buckles and a shoulder strap. Jack and Annie looked out the window. Below the treehouse was a wide, snow-covered field that ended in a wall of evergreen trees. Beyond the trees was a city skyline. This is definitely New York, said Annie. See, the Empire State Building? Remember our visit to the top? She pointed to a faraway building that rose above the others. This must be Central Park. I remember that big field. Yeah, I do too, said Jack. But we've landed in New York in 1938. It was different back then. He opened the research book and read from the introduction. The city of New York is the largest city in the Western Hemisphere. It covers an area of 322 square miles. Jack closed the book. Whoa, even in 1938, New York was a huge city, he said. This is going to be like looking for a needle in a haystack. I'll read our mission poem again, said Annie. She read the first verse aloud. The very last unicorn is now hidden well by those who have put him under a spell. Okay, so this unicorn was put under a spell, said Jack, and he must be hidden somewhere in New York, or Merlin wouldn't have sent us here. Right, said Annie. She read the next verse. 4 centuries, 4 decades, from that afternoon, at the end of November, before the blue moon. What's a blue moon? Asked Annie, looking up. I've heard that expression before. It's when you have 2 full moons in the same month, just said Jack. It doesn't happen very often. Oh, said Annie. She read on. He will wake once more and be free to go home, if you call out his name, divine flower of Rome. Wait, does that mean the unicorn's name is Divine Flower of Rome? Asked Jack. I guess, said Annie. She read on. You must coax him to stand. Once his name is spoken, his chain will break, and the spell too be broken. Then a young girl must love him, and show him the way, lest he be trapped forever on public display. If he loses this chance to rise and depart, all magic will fade from his horn and his heart. So, I'm the young girl, said Annie, and I have to help him get home or his magic will fade away forever. Right, said Jack. Okay, let's review. There's a unicorn on public display somewhere in New York City. He's under a spell. The spell runs out in late November before a blue moon. But he'll only wake up when someone calls his name, which is Divine Flower of Rome. Then a young girl, you, must love him and show him the way home. Great, said Annie. Let's get started. Get started? How? Jack said. Maybe we should talk to some New Yorkers, said Annie. We can ask them if they know anything about a unicorn in New York City. She looked out the window. There are some people in the park right now. Jack looked out through the falling snow. He saw girls crossing the field carrying skates. He saw 2 people standing on top of a small hill. One wore a cape and the other a long raincoat. If we start asking people about unicorns, they'll think we're crazy, said Jack. Who cares? Said Annie. Maybe someone will at least know something that can help us. Let's go down. She started down the ladder. Jack quickly packed up their books. He buckled his bag and followed her. When they stepped onto the ground, Jack and Annie looked around. The skaters were gone. The 2 people on the hill were gone too. Where'd everybody go? Said Jack. I don't know, but we'll find someone else. Come on, said Annie. Jack and Annie started across the wide field. The snow was falling fast and furiously. The wind blew harder. Look, a frozen pond, said Annie, pointing. That must be where the skaters were coming from. Wet snow stuck to Jack's glasses. He wiped them off so he could see. No one was skating on the pond now. Whirlwinds of powdery snow swirled over the ice. Keep going, said Jack. They kept trudging through the snow. Hey, look, remember that? Said Annie. What? Said Jack. He wiped the snow off his glasses again. He saw a merry-go-round. Oh, yeah. On their trip to New York with their Aunt Mallory, they'd taken a ride on it. But now, the riderless painted horses looked sad and lonely. I feel like we're the last living creatures in Central Park, said Jack. Which way do we go now? Asked Annie. Which way did we come from? It was hard to see anything in the white haze of the falling snow. The buildings bordering the park and the skyscrapers in the distance had disappeared. Let's see what our book says, said Jack. He unbuckled his leather briefcase and pulled out the research book. He found a picture of Central Park and read, Central Park is a vast natural area in the middle of New York City. The park has 32 miles of winding footpaths and covers 840 acres of land. It has rock formations, woods, and many bodies of water. It also has, okay, I got it, said Annie. It's a big park. Is there a map that shows where we are? Jack tried to read from the index, but the window and snow made it impossible. He stuffed the book back into his briefcase. Forget it, he said. Let's just try to get out of the park. Jack and Annie turned away from the lonely merry-go-round and walked across the snow. A gust of wind blew Jack's cap off. As he turned around to grab it, he saw a couple walking a short distance behind them. The two people looked like teenagers. They were walking with their heads bowed against the wind. The girl wore a dark cape with a hood. The boy wore a hat and a tan raincoat with a belt. Hey, look, Jack said to Annie. But at that moment, the wind shook the trees, and big chunks of snow fell from the branches. Jack and Annie ducked and covered their heads. When the wind died down, Jack looked around for the couple. They're gone now, he said. Who's gone? Said Annie. Who did you see? Two teenagers, I think, said Jack. A boy and a girl. We saw them earlier from the treehouse. I think they might be following us. Wait a second, said Annie. Two teenagers, a boy and a girl, following us? Who does that remind you of? A big smile crossed Jack's face. Teddy and Kathleen, he said. Think about it, said Annie. On our last 3 missions, it seemed like Teddy and Kathleen were always nearby, wearing disguises, ready to help us when we needed it. Right, said Jack. We could sure use their help now. He turned around. Hello, he shouted. Hello? Annie yelled. But the wind answered them with a howl. More clumps of snow blew down on Jack and Annie. Let's get going, said Annie. They'll find us sooner or later. They always do. Jack and Annie kept walking until they came to the ice pond again. We've been here before, said Jack. We're going in circles. How do we get out of the park? We have to try to walk in a straight line, said Annie. Annie and Jack struggled on. Jack kept looking back, trying to catch sight of Teddy and Kathleen again. But it was getting harder and harder to see anything. Wet snow kept sticking to his glasses. Snow had blown up the sleeves of his jacket, under his neck scarf, and into his mittens. Yikes, said Annie. She grabbed Jack's arm. Look! A huge wolf-like dog stood on a ledge above them, his mouth open. Whoa, said Jack. The dog didn't move. He stood perfectly still. Annie laughed. Oh, he's a statue, she said. She ran to a plate under the dog's statue, brushed off the snow, and shouted to Jack. His name is Balto. In 1925, he carried medicine 600 miles through a blizzard in Alaska. That's really great, said Jack. But how do we get out of the park? Well, if we follow this path, it's bound to lead somewhere, said Annie. Jack followed Annie up a wide path. They walked and walked, passing a snow-covered outdoor stage and a fountain with the statue of an angel. Raising her outspread wings, the angel seemed about to fly away. Which way now? Jack said. Two paths led the way from the angel fountain. One to the right, one to the left. I don't know, said Annie. Pick one. Jack headed to the left, Annie followed. They passed a frozen lake and walked over an arched bridge. Jack kept his eyes on the ground and walked and walked and walked. Every time he lifted his head, the snow felt like needles against his skin. Jack tried to keep walking in a straight line, but the path they were following began twisting and turning like a maze. Different paths branched off, curving this way and that. Jack remembered information from the research book. The park has 32 miles of winding footpaths. We have got to get off these paths, he shouted to Annie, or we'll be lost in Central Park forever. Annie didn't answer. Annie! Jack shielded his face from the cutting wind and looked back. He didn't see her. Jack turned around and around, looking for Annie, but he couldn't see anything. The world was completely white. Annie, he cried. Had she gone off on another path? Was she lost? Annie. She could wander around in the storm for hours. I thought, Jack. She could freeze to death. I have to find her. Jack tried to stay calm. He took a few breaths. A rhyme, he thought. He couldn't remember which magic rhymes were left. He struggled to unbuckle his briefcase. His fingers felt frozen. He pulled out the book and hunched over it, trying to shelter it from the storm. He wiped his glasses off and read. Turn into ducks. That wouldn't help. Pull a cloud from the sky. That would only make things worse. Find the treasure you must never lose. Is Annie a treasure? Jack wondered. He'd always thought of a treasure as something super valuable, like gold or silver or rare jewels. But right now, Annie seemed more valuable than any of those things. She seemed like the most valuable thing in the world. Jack found the rhyme and shouted. Treasure forever must never be lost. Um, Mother boast. Jack? Jack whirled around. Annie was standing right behind him. There you are, she said. I was afraid you got lost. I wasn't lost, said Jack. You were lost. He slipped the rhyme book back into his briefcase. Not me, you, said Annie. Whatever, said Jack. Just stay near me now. He took her hand and gripped it tightly. Okay, let's figure out what to do. Wait, is that a castle over there? Said Annie. A what? Said Jack. A castle, look! Peering through the storm, Jack saw a small castle sitting on top of a snowy hill. A light burned in a window. A castle in Central Park? Jack said. That's weird. Let's go see if anyone's inside, said Annie. Maybe they can help us. People in the castle might know about unicorns, or at least know how to get out of the park, Jack said. Jack and Annie struggled up the stone steps that led to the castle. At the top of the steps, Jack glanced back at the park. He could barely make out two figures in the snow, one in a dark cape and one in a raincoat. Them! It's them! Said Jack. A cloud of wind-driven snow blew over the couple. Jack kept looking, eager for another glimpse of the two young enchanters. but the snow hid everything in sight. "They'll find us," said Annie. "Come on." She pushed open the door to the castle and led the way inside. The door slammed shut behind them. Jack and Annie stood in a dimly lit hallway. "Hello? Who's there?" a man called. "Jack and Annie," shouted Annie. A tall, thin man came down a curving stone stairway. He wore an old-fashioned blue striped suit. "Goodness! 2 children," he said. "What are you doing here on a day like today?" "We got lost in the park," said Jack. "My name's Jack, and this is my sister Annie. Pleased to meet you." "I'm Bill Perkins," said the man. "Welcome to Belvedere Castle." "What is this place?" asked Annie. "The castle was built in 1869, said Mr. Perkins. "It was meant to be a delightful surprise when one wandered the park. Today, it's a delightful surprise with a nature observatory and weather instruments inside." "Weather instruments?" Jack said. "Yes, I've come from the U.S. Weather Bureau to check them," said Mr. Perkins. "I'm afraid right now our data is telling us that the weather's undergoing a rapid and terrible change." Jack shivered in his damp clothes. "Our data is telling us the same thing," he said. "A storm has blown in from the Midwest, bringing wind and snow," said Mr. Perkins. "But after nightfall, things will get worse. Another storm is coming up from the south, gathering speed on its way." "That sounds serious," said Annie. "It's worse than serious," Mr. Perkins said. "It's disastrous. After dark, the two systems will meet and create a monster blizzard. It could be the worst in New York history, even worse than the blizzard of '88. Jack caught his breath. "Poor New York," said Annie. "Ah, yes. It's the last thing our great city needs during these hard times," said Mr. Perkins, shaking his head. "Excuse me, but I have a question," said Annie. "Do you know if there's a full moon tonight?" "Well, yes, there is," said Bill Perkins. "You won't see it, though. Not through those storm clouds. Actually, it'll be the second full moon this month." "A blue moon," said Annie. "You're exactly right. A blue moon, indeed," said Mr. Perkins. "I have another question," said Annie. "Do you know where we can find, um, any unusual animals?" Jack interrupted. "On public display somewhere? In New York City?" "Well, your best bet in New York would be the Bronx Zoo," said Mr. Perkins. "They display all kinds of animals from all over the world." "Great," said Annie. "How do we get there?" "What? You can't go to the zoo today," said Miss Perkins. "Not in the storm." "No, no, of course not," Jack said quickly. "But if we ever decide to go to the zoo in the future, how would we get there?" "Well, the best way would be to take the West Side IRT," said Mr. Perkins. "What's that?" said Jack. "A subway line